beneath the bustling streets of the Roman Empire, in candlelit caves sealed from the outside world, tens of thousands of soldiers, merchants, and senators knelt before a god most people today have never heard of. His name was Mithras, and for 3 centuries his mysteries spread from the misty forts of Britain to the deserts of Syria, rivaling the young Christian faith in reach and devotion. This is the story of how a religion powerful enough to challenge Christianity vanished so completely that history nearly forgot it existed. Between the 1st and 4th centuries after Christ, 2 spiritual movements grew side by side within the borders of Rome. Both promised salvation. Both offered a community bound by ritual and secrecy. Both spoke of light conquering darkness. Yet one of them became the largest religion the world has ever known, while the other was erased so thoroughly that we do not possess a single page written by its own believers. And that is the paradox that should stop you in your tracks. If Mithraism truly attracted tens of thousands of Roman soldiers, imperial officials, and members of the elite, if its underground temples once dotted the empire from the Danube to the Nile, then why has almost no one today ever heard its name? Why do we remember the emperors, the gladiators, the aqueducts, and the legions, but not the God who commanded the loyalty of the very men who built and defended that world? The strangest thing about the Mithraic Mysteries is not that they disappeared. It is that they were once considered, by some, the most serious rival early Christianity ever faced, and then they fell silent, as if a hand had reached into history and quietly closed the book. Before we descend into those torchlit caves together, let me say this. If you love ancient mysteries, sacred rituals, Greek mythology, esoteric philosophies, and knowledge that history has forgotten, subscribe to the channel right now. Every video is carefully researched from reliable historical, archaeological, and philosophical sources, all in the pursuit of secrets that time has very nearly erased. This journey is one of the deepest we have ever taken, and I would love for you to walk it with us to the end. Here is the heart of what you are about to discover. The Mithraic Mysteries were not merely a secret cult, some curious footnote in the margins of Roman religion. They were a sophisticated initiatory system, a carefully constructed ladder of the soul that wove together Persian myth, Greek philosophy, and Roman tradition into a single vision, the victory of light over darkness, lived out step by step in the life of every initiate. Over the course of this video, we will ask the questions that scholars have wrestled with for more than a century. What exactly were the Mithraic Mysteries? Who was Mithras, and where did he truly come from ancient Persia, or the creative heart of Rome itself? Why did this faith spread with such astonishing speed along the roads and rivers of the empire? What really happened in those sealed underground sanctuaries, in rituals so secret that no initiate ever wrote them down? And finally, the question that haunts this entire story: why did a religion strong enough to rival Christianity ultimately vanish from the face of the earth? To understand any of it, you must first stand where they stood. So imagine a world where Roman legions march across 3 continents, their standards catching the sun from the hills of Scotland to the sands of Mesopotamia. Imagine roads tens of thousands of miles of stone, binding 1,000 cities into a single living organism, carrying not only grain and silver and soldiers, but ideas. Along those roads travel merchants from Syria, philosophers from Alexandria, freed slaves from Asia Minor, and with them come the gods of the East, Isis of Egypt, Cybele of Anatolia, and a mysterious figure in a Phrygian cap whose worshippers speak of caves, of stars, and of a sacred bull. Rome, for all its marble temples and public sacrifices, is hungry for something more intimate, a faith that speaks not to the state, but to the soul. And beneath the noise of that world, something extraordinary is happening. Under the crowded streets, behind unmarked doors, down narrow stairways, cut into the earth, there are temples that most Romans will never see. They are called Mithraea, and they are unlike any other sacred space in the ancient world. Step inside one, and the city above you disappears. The ceiling is low and vaulted, deliberately shaped like a cave, because for these believers, the cave is an image of the cosmos itself. The great vault of heaven turned inward. The air is thick with incense and the smoke of oil lamps. Torchlight trembles across the walls. Along each side run long stone benches, worn smooth by generations of men who reclined there to share a sacred meal of bread and wine. Shoulder to shoulder, soldier beside senator, freedman beside officer, and at the far end, glowing in the flickering light, stands the image that defines everything. A carved relief of Mithras himself, young and powerful, kneeling on the back of a great bull, his blade drawn, his face turned away from the act, while a dog, a serpent, and a scorpion gather at the dying animal's body, and the sun and moon watch from above. Every Mithraism in the empire, from Britain to Syria, holds some version of this same scene. It was the first thing an initiate saw, and the last image many of them carried to their graves. And to this day, no ancient text survives to tell us, in their own words, what it meant. This underground chamber is the stage on which our entire story will unfold. Here men were blindfolded and bound. Here they passed through 7 grades of initiation, each linked to a planet wandering the heavens. Here they swore oaths of silence so absolute that they kept them so well that 2,000 years later, we are still pressing our ears against the stone, straining to hear what was spoken there. But before we can hope to decode the rituals, the symbols, or the reasons for this faith's rise and fall, we have to confront a deceptively simple question, one that turns out to be among the most contested puzzles in the history of religion. What would drive grown men, hardened centurions who had stared down death on the frontier, pragmatic administrators who ran the machinery of empire to crawl into these dark, smoke-filled caves and kneel before a bull-slaying god? To answer that, we must first ask, who exactly was Mithras? And the moment we ask it, the trail leads us far beyond Rome, back across the centuries, into the ancient highlands of Persia. And it is there, in those wind-scoured mountains, that the story truly begins, long before Rome, long before the caves and the silence. If you travel back more than 3,000 years, to the world of the earliest Indo-Iranian peoples, you find a name already glowing in the oldest hymns humanity has preserved. In the Vedas of ancient India, he is Mitra, the god of the covenant, the divine guardian of agreements between men. Cross the mountains into Persia, and he becomes Mithra, one of the great luminous beings of the Zoroastrian tradition. He is the lord of contracts, of oaths, of the sworn word. When 2 men clasped hands and made a promise, Mithra was the invisible third party in the room, the witness who could not be deceived. The Persians said he had 10,000 eyes and 10,000 ears, that he rode across the sky before the sun itself, and that no lie, no betrayal, no broken vow could ever escape his sight. Think about what that means. Before he was ever a god of caves and secrets, Mithra was a god of truth, a god of loyalty, a god of light that exposes everything hidden. Hold on to that idea, because it will matter more than almost anything else in this story. From Persia, the god began a long, slow journey westward, carried not by armies of missionaries, but by the quiet currents of empire and trade. As Persian power spread into Asia Minor, so did Mithra's name. In the kingdoms of Pontus and Commagene, on the frontier where Persian and Greek worlds met and mingled, kings claimed him as their divine protector. High on a mountain sanctuary at Nemrut, King Antiochus I of Commagene left us something remarkable. A carved relief showing the king standing face to face with Mithras, not kneeling before him, but shaking his hand. A handshake, the ancient gesture of the covenant frozen in stone. Even here, centuries before the Roman mysteries, the god and the sworn bond were inseparable. And then comes one of the strangest and most tantalizing moments in the entire history of this faith. The ancient writer Plutarch tells us that in the 1st century before Christ, the pirates of Cilicia Bold, ruthless seafarers who terrorized the Mediterranean practiced secret rites of Mithras. When the Roman general Pompey swept the seas clean of them, Plutarch says, those rites did not die. They survived, and according to him, they were still being performed in his own day. Is this the moment the gods slipped into the Roman world, smuggled in, fittingly enough, by outlaws? We cannot say for certain, but it is a haunting image, a Persian god of oaths, whispered about on pirate ships, drifting toward the heart of an empire that would one day fill its underground temples with his name. Now, here is where the story becomes a genuine battlefield, not of soldiers, but of scholars. For most of the 20th century, one man's theory dominated everything we thought we knew. The great Belgian historian Franz Cumont argued that Roman Mithraism was simply the ancient Persian religion, transmitted west more or less intact, that when a Roman soldier knelt in a Mithraeum, he was practicing, in essence, a faith born on the Iranian plateau. It was an elegant, sweeping vision, and for decades it stood almost unchallenged. But then modern scholars began to look closer, and the elegant vision started to crack. Researchers like Roger Beck and David Ulansey pointed out something unsettling. Almost nothing in the Roman cult can actually be found in Persian sources. The underground temples, the 7 grades of initiation, the secret handshakes, the astrological symbolism, none of it appears in the Zoroastrian tradition. And so a bold new idea emerged, that Roman Mithraism was not an import at all, but a new creation. A religion invented perhaps in the 1st century after Christ, perhaps by a single brilliant founder or a small circle of them, that deliberately dressed itself in Persian robes. The exotic Eastern origin in this view was part of the mystique. A Roman religion wearing Persian clothing, trading on the ancient prestige of a faraway name. And nothing captures this puzzle better than the image at the very heart of the cult, the tauroctony, Mithras slaying the bull. It is everywhere in the Roman evidence carved on the central wall of virtually every Mithraeum ever excavated, from Britain to the Euphrates. It is, without exaggeration, the icon of the entire religion. And yet in all the Persian sources, in all the hymns and scriptures devoted to Mithra, across 1,000 years the bull-slaying scene appears nowhere. Not once. The single most important image of Roman Mithraism has no clear Persian ancestor. That is not a small detail. That is a mystery cut into stone, repeated hundreds of times across 3 continents, and we still cannot say with certainty where it came from. What we can say is this: whatever the Roman mysteries were, they were profoundly different from anything Persia had known. Persian Mithra was worshipped openly, under the vault of the sky. Roman Mithras was hidden underground, revealed only to the initiated. The Persian god belonged to everyone. The Roman god belonged to a brotherhood small, secretive, and exclusively male. His communities were intimate cells of perhaps a few dozen men, bound together by ritual, by hierarchy, and by silence. You were not born into this faith. You could not simply wander into a temple and observe. You had to be chosen, tested, and remade. And perhaps that is the emotional truth beneath all the scholarly debate. Whether Mithras came from Persia or was born in the imagination of some unknown Roman visionary, whoever shaped this religion understood something deep about the human heart. They took the oldest promises of the ancient god loyalty, truth, unconquerable light, and forged them into something a Roman soldier could hold on to in the darkness of a frontier night. A god who kept faith with those who kept faith with him. A god of cosmic victory, of light triumphant over shadow. A god perfectly suited to men whose entire lives were built on oaths, discipline, and brotherhood. This was not a god you simply worshipped from a distance. This was a god you joined. And join they did by the thousands. To understand how a god without scripture, without public temples, without missionaries conquered an empire, we must march with the legions themselves. Follow the roads, and you will find him. That is the strange truth archaeology has revealed to us over the past century. Wherever the Roman eagle flew, Mithras followed, or perhaps it was the other way around. Today, scholars have identified more than 400 Mithraic sites scattered across the ancient world, and their locations tell a story no written text ever could. At Carrawburgh, on Hadrian's Wall, where the wind howls down from Scotland and Roman sentries once stared into the northern mist, a small stone temple to Mithras still stands beside the ruins of the fort. 3,000 miles away, at Dura Europos on the banks of the Euphrates, at the empire's opposite frontier, another Mithraeum was carved into the fabric of a garrison town, its painted walls glowing with the same god, the same bull, the same eternal drama. Along the Rhine and the Danube, where the legions held the line against the tribes beyond, Mithraea cluster like beads on a string. And at Ostia, the bustling port that fed the city of Rome itself, archaeologists have uncovered more than a dozen of these underground sanctuaries. Tucked between warehouses and apartment blocks, hidden in plain sight among the crowds. Look at a map of these sites, and you are looking at a map of Roman power, the frontiers, the fortresses, the ports, the arteries of trade. This was not a religion of the countryside or the philosophical salon. This was a religion of the empire's working machinery, and at the heart of that machinery stood the soul. Why did the legions love Mithras so fiercely? Put yourself in a soldier's boots for a moment. Your entire life is built on an oath, the sacramentum, sworn to your emperor and your comrades, binding until death. Your survival depends on discipline, on the man beside you holding his position when the line buckles. Your world is divided cleanly into light and dark, order against chaos, Rome against the barbarian knight, life against the cold. Now imagine a god who embodies all of it, a god of contracts and kept promises, a god of loyalty, of struggle, of victory wrestled from darkness through sheer unbreakable will. Mithras did not ask soldiers to become something other than what they were. He sanctified what they already were and lifted it toward the stars. And the cult's very structure mirrored the military life these men knew. A Mithraeum was small, most could hold perhaps 20 or 30 worshippers, rarely more. There were no vast crowds, no anonymous congregations. Each community was intimate, tight-knit, bound by shared secrets and shared ordeals, like a unit that had bled together. When the empire posted a man to a new frontier, he did not simply find a temple in his new home. He found brothers, men who had passed through the same initiations, sworn the same oaths, seen the same hidden things by torchlight, the handshake of Mithras. And we know from the sources that initiates were called syndexioi. Those united by the handshake could turn a stranger in a strange city into family. But the brotherhood reached beyond the barracks. Dig into the inscriptions these men left behind, the dedications carved in stone, and a wider world emerges. Customs officials on the Danube frontier, collecting tolls at the empire's edge. Imperial freedmen, former slaves who now ran the emperor's bureaus and estates. Merchants moving grain and wine and silver across the Mediterranean. Even slaves themselves, admitted to the mysteries alongside free men, kneeling in the same darkness, sharing the same sacred meal. Mithraism wove itself into the empire's connective tissue, its army, its bureaucracy, its trade routes, creating an invisible network of trust that spanned 3 continents. In a world without banks as we know them, without contracts you could easily enforce 1,000 miles from home, that trust was worth more than gold. And yet there is one absence in the record, and it is deafening. In all those hundreds of sites, all those thousands of inscriptions, we find no women, not one female initiate. The mysteries of Mithras were a brotherhood in the strictest sense, a religion of men. For men, forged in a masculine world of oaths and hierarchy and struggle. Whatever else this tells us, it reveals the cult's essential character. Mithraism was not trying to embrace the whole of humanity. It was consecrating a particular kind of bond between particular kinds of men. And here we arrive at one of history's most fascinating parallels, because in those very same decades, along those very same roads, through those very same port cities and garrison towns, another faith was spreading. Early Christianity moved through the identical arteries of the empire, and it too offered what Mithras offered: salvation, community, moral transformation. A sacred meal of bread and wine, a promise that death was not the end. Two rivers flowing through the same landscape, but their currents ran in opposite directions. Mithraism recruited quietly, selectively, from within the establishment soldiers, officials, men with positions and reputations, initiated one by one behind closed doors. Christianity flung its doors open and preached in the marketplace to everyone, to women, to slaves, to the poor, to the broken, to precisely the people the Mithraic brotherhood never thought to invite. One faith built a network, the other built a movement. And in that difference, though no one could see it yet, a great turning of history was already quietly underway. But numbers and networks are cold things, and religion is not lived in the abstract. So let us end where the truth of Mithraism actually lived. Picture a young soldier from Italy or Spain, posted to a windswept fort on the northern frontier. He is 1,000 miles from his mother's hearth. The winters are long, the nights are longer, and the gods of his childhood feel very far away. Then, one evening, a comrade touches his shoulder and leads him down a few stone steps, beneath the ordinary world, into a low vaulted chamber warm with torchlight. Painted stars glitter on the ceiling. The carved image of the bull slayer gazes down from the far wall, and around him on the benches sit men he trusts with his life-sworn brothers, sharing bread and wine before the face of their god. For that hour he is not far from home, he is home. This was the true genius of the mysteries of Mithras. Religion not as doctrine, but as belonging. But what actually happened when the Mithraeum door closed behind him? What ordeals did he face? What words were spoken? What visions were shown by firelight? What secrets were so sacred that in 300 years, not a single initiate ever wrote them down? It is time to descend into the cave. Step through that low doorway, and the first thing you notice is what's missing. There are no windows, no sunlight, no sound from the street above. Every Mithraeum ever excavated shares this deliberate design, a long, narrow chamber sunk into the earth, dark by intention, lit only by lamps and torches. And this was no accident of architecture. To the initiates, this room was the universe in miniature. The vaulted ceiling, often painted with stars, was the dome of heaven itself. The central aisle between the benches was the path of the soul, the road it travels between the world of matter and the world of light, and at the far end, always the tauroctony, the image of the bull slaying, stood like the axis on which all creation turned. We can still walk through these cosmic caves today. At Ostia, the port city of Rome, archaeologists uncovered a sanctuary, now called the Mithraeum of the Seven Spheres, its floor inlaid with 7 arcs of mosaic 1. For each planetary heaven the soul must cross. In Rome itself, beneath the church of Santa Prisca, painted figures still process along the walls, and fragments of verse survive in fading letters, whispering of piety, of blood, of salvation. These rooms were small. Most held perhaps 20 or 30 men, and that intimacy was the point. This was not a religion of crowds. It was a religion of the few, the tested, the chosen. And to be chosen, you had to climb. The mysteries of Mithras were built as a ladder, 7 grades of initiation, each one guarded by a planet, each one a rung on the soul's ascent through the celestial spheres. At the bottom stood the Corax, the raven, under the protection of Mercury, the newcomer, the messenger, the man who served the meal, but did not yet fully share its secrets. Above him came the Nymphos, the bridegroom, sacred to Venus, the initiate mystically wedded to the god, veiled like a bride carrying a lamp. Then the Miles, the soldier of Mithras, under Mars. And here the sources give us a haunting detail. A crown was offered to him on the point of a sword, and he was taught to push it away, declaring that Mithras alone was his crown. Forth came the Leo, the lion, burning under Jupiter, the first of the senior grades. a creature of fire. Fifth, the Persian, under the moon, honoring the faith's claimed homeland in the east. Sixth, the Heliodromus, the runner of the sun, who sat beside the Father at the sacred meal and played the role of Sol himself. And at the summit stood the Pater, the Father, under distant Saturn, the outermost sphere. He wore the Phrygian cap of Mithras, carried a staff and a ring, and held the power to initiate, to teach, to judge. In that underground room, he was the god's living representative. 7 grades, 7 planets, 7 gates. The message could not be clearer. The soul was climbing home, sphere by sphere, out of darkness and back toward the light from which it fell. But no one climbed without suffering. From archaeology, from scattered inscriptions, and ironically from hostile Christian writers who despised the cult, we can partly reconstruct the ordeals. The candidate was stripped and blindfolded, his eyes sealed against the light he had not yet earned. His hands were bound, sometimes with the entrails of a sacrificed animal, and he was made to kneel, helpless, before men whose faces he could not see. There are accounts of trials by heat and by cold, of symbolic deaths, a sword flashing toward the throat and stopping, a mock burial, a rebirth into the arms of brothers. Some initiates may have been branded or marked on the body, carrying the sign of their god in their very flesh for the rest of their lives. In one Mithraism at Koa, frescoes still show these scenes. A small, naked, trembling figure the candidate guided, pushed, tested by masked officiants. And for the lion, the fire grade, there was a detail so strange it could never have been invented. When he was purified, water was forbidden, for water quenches flame, and fire was sacred to him. Instead, his hands and tongue were washed with honey golden, sweet, incorruptible honey, the food of the blessed. Why endure all this? Because on the far side of the ordeal waited the heart of the entire religion, the sacred meal. When the trials were done, the brothers reclined on the long benches, and bread and wine or bread and water were blessed and shared. This was no ordinary supper. It was a reenactment, a living memory of the mythic banquet that Mithras and Sol, the sun, had shared over the body of the slain bull, the feast that sealed their friendship and the salvation of the world. The Father presided in the place of Mithras. The Sunrunner sat in the place of Sol. The ravens served, and every man in that torchlit room believed that by eating this bread and drinking this cup, he was taking the victory of his God into his own body. If that sounds familiar to you, you are not the first to notice. It disturbed the early Christians profoundly. Justin Martyr, writing in the 2nd century, complained that the followers of Mithras used bread and a cup of water in their rites, and he could explain the resemblance to the Christian Eucharist only one way. Wicked demons, he said, had counterfeited the sacrament in advance to deceive mankind. Think about what that accusation reveals. 2 underground faiths, in the same cities and the same century, gathering their believers around a sacred meal of bread and wine, each convinced the other was the imitation. History rarely offers us a mirror so unsettling, and yet, beneath the ordeals and the symbols, something profoundly human was happening in those caves. A man walked in as a raven, restless, earthbound, his soul scattered like a scavenger bird. Through fear, through darkness, through the hands of his brothers, he died to who he had been, and grade by grade, sphere by sphere, he climbed. The soldier learned loyalty, the lion learned purity, the runner of the sun learned light. What the mysteries taught in the end was not a doctrine but a direction, that the universe is not chaos, not a prison, not an accident but a ladder, and that a man who is willing to be tested can climb it all the way home. Yet here is the thing every initiate understood, and every modern visitor to a Mithraism can still feel. The entire ladder pointed to a single image. Every torch, every grade, every oath drew the eye down that long, dark aisle to the carving at the end, a young god in a swirling cape, kneeling on the back of a dying bull, driving his blade home while a dog, a snake, and a scorpion closed in. Every Mithraism on earth ends in that same frozen moment. It is the lock on the door of the entire religion. And if we want to open that door to understand what these men truly believed about the cosmos and their place in it, then we must finally do what generations of scholars have attempted. We must decode the tauroctony itself. So look at it. Really look at it, the way an initiate would have looked at it, kneeling in torchlight after years of trials, seeing it unveiled at last. There, at the beginning of the story, is the god himself emerging from solid stone, the Petra Genetrix, the generative rock born not from a mother, but from the bones of the earth itself, already gripping a torch in one hand and a dagger in the other, light and blade, illumination and sacrifice. From his first breath, Mithras carries both, and then the central scene, the image repeated in every temple from the Scottish frontier to the Syrian desert. A young god in a Phrygian cap, kneeling on the back of a great bull, one knee pressed into its spine, one hand wrenching back its head by the nostrils, the other driving a dagger deep into its shoulder. And here is the strangest detail of all: his face is turned away. He does not watch what he does. He looks back over his shoulder, as if receiving an order from somewhere beyond the frame. As if this killing is not his desire but his duty, a command written into the structure of the universe itself. Around him, the animals gather with eerie precision. A dog leaps toward the wound, drinking the blood as it falls. A snake stretches upward toward the same stream. A scorpion clamps itself onto the bull's genitals. A raven perches nearby, watching, sometimes seeming to whisper into the god's ear. On either side stand two smaller figures, twins of Mithras himself, dressed exactly like him. Kots, holding his torch raised toward the sky, and Kotopots, holding his torch lowered toward the earth, and in the upper corners, presiding over it all, the sun and the moon's soul in his radiant chariot, Luna sinking away into shadow. For centuries, scholars stared at this scene and asked the obvious question: why these animals? Why a dog, a snake, a raven, a scorpion, creatures that appear in no Persian myth of Mithra, creatures that seem almost randomly assembled? And then slowly a pattern emerged that changed everything. Take those figures and lift them into the night sky. Taurus the bull, Canis the dog, Hydra the snake, Corvus the raven, Scorpio the scorpion. Every single actor in the tauroctony corresponds to a constellation, and not just any constellations, but ones that lay along or near the celestial equator in a very specific era of the ancient sky. The tauroctony, in other words, may not be a myth scene at all. It may be a star map, and this is where the story becomes breathtaking. In the 2nd century before Christ, the Greek astronomer Hipparchus made one of the most unsettling discoveries in the history of science. He realized that the entire framework of the heavens is not fixed. The equinoxes, the 2 points, where the sun's path crosses the celestial equator, drift slowly backward through the zodiac, 1 degree every 72 years, a full cycle taking almost 26,000 years. We now call it the precession of the equinoxes, and we know it is caused by the slow wobble of the Earth's axis. But to the ancient mind, the implication was staggering. The stars themselves, the eternal, unchanging stars, the very machinery of fate, were moving. Some power was turning the entire universe. The scholar David Ulansey proposed that this is the secret hidden in the tauroctony. Because of precession, the spring equinox had once stood in the constellation of Taurus, and then, around 2000 BC, it moved on. The age of the bull ended. The cosmic clock ticked forward, and who could end a cosmic age? Only a god standing outside the cosmos entirely. Only a being with his hand on the axis of the world. In this reading, Mithras slaying the bull is not killing an animal, he is killing an age. He is the unseen force, Hipparchus glimpsed in his calculations, the power mighty enough to shift the entire sphere of the fixed stars. That is why his face is turned away, towards something beyond the frame. He acts from outside the universe he is moving. Feel the weight of what that offered and initiate. Romans of this era lived under the tyranny of astrology. Your fate was written in the stars at your birth, sealed, unappealable. But if Mithras stood above the stars, if he could move the very wheel of the zodiac, then he could move your fate too. To be initiated into his mysteries was to place yourself under the protection of the one God the stars themselves obeyed. It was, quite literally, an escape route from destiny, and suddenly all the other symbols snap into focus. The cave temple, the Mithraism, was never just a hiding place, it was an image of the cosmos itself. Its vaulted ceiling painted with stars, so that every ritual meal was eaten inside a model of the universe. Caught with his raised torch is the rising sun, the spring, life ascending. Cautopates with his lowered torch is the setting sun, the autumn, the descent into death. Together they are the two equinoxes, the hinges on which the whole year swings, dawn and dusk standing eternal guard on either side of the sacrifice. Even the bull's death is not an ending. Look closely at the carvings and you see something miraculous. From the tip of the dying bull's tail, ears of wheat are sprouting. Its blood feeds the dog and the snake. Its body becomes grain. Its death becomes the world's food. This is sacrifice, as the ancients understood it in their bones, that life does not come from nothing, that something must be given for something to grow. And above it all, Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, bows to Mithras, clasps his hand, and shares a sacred banquet with him. Over the hide of the slain bull, a pact between the visible light that rules the day and the hidden power that rules the light. And this is the moment every initiate was being prepared for through all 7 grades, all the trials, all the years of silence. The realization that this single carved image was never merely a myth, it was a compressed diagram of the universe. Astronomy, symbolism, and spiritual philosophy fused into one picture no larger than a doorway. The turning of cosmic ages, the geometry of the heavens, the mystery of sacrifice, the promise that fate can be overcome, and folded inside it, one intimate personal teaching, whispered from the stone to every man who knelt before it. The soul is like the sun. It must descend. It must pass through the underworld of the cave, through darkness, through death, and only then can it rise again, unanchored, into the light. A religion capable of this sophisticated, this beautiful, this widespread, with temples on 3 continents, and initiates in every legion, surely, by every law of history, it should have survived. And yet, within a single century, every Mithraism in the empire fell silent. The torches went out. The bull was slain for the last time. What killed the mysteries of Mithras? The answer begins not with an army, not with a persecution, but with a single man's change of heart. In the year 312, the Emperor Constantine stood on the eve of battle at the Milvian Bridge, and according to the story he later told, he saw a sign in the sky, not the radiant crown of Sol, not the cap of Mithras, but a cross. Whatever truly happened that day, the consequences reshaped the world. 1 year later, in 313, the Edict of Milan granted Christians the freedom to worship openly. For the first time in 3 centuries, the faith of the catacombs stepped into the sunlight, and the faith of the caves, the faith that had chosen darkness deliberately, sacredly, suddenly found itself on the wrong side of history. The tide did not turn all at once. There was even a moment when it seemed it might turn back. The Emperor Julian, whom Christians would call the apostate, tried to restore the old gods in the 360s, and he loved the mysteries of the sun with a philosopher's passion. But Julian reigned for less than 2 years before dying on a Persian battlefield, and with him died the last imperial hope of the pagan world. Then came Theodosius. In 391, his decrees banned the pagan rites outright. Sacrifices were forbidden. Temples were closed, and in city after city, fort after fort, the Mithraea fell silent. Some were abandoned, their torches left to gutter out in the dark. Some were desecrated, their reliefs smashed by Christian zealots who saw demons in the bull-slaying god. Some were simply buried, filled with rubble, sealed like tombs. And in Rome itself, beneath the Basilica of San Clemente, You can still descend today through layers of history and stand in a Mithraism with a church built directly on top of it, stone upon stone, one faith literally resting on the grave of another. But here is the harder truth, the one that emperors' decrees alone cannot explain. Christianity did not merely outlaw Mithraism, it out-survived it, and the reasons lie deep in the very structure of the two faiths. Consider what Mithraism was. A religion with no scripture, no gospels, no letters, no sacred book a believer could carry in his pack. Copy by candlelight, smuggle across a border. Everything, the myths, the meanings, the passwords, the secret behind the tauroctony lived only in memory, passed mouth to mouth, from father to initiate, in the flickering dark of the cave. That was its beauty, that was its power, and that was its death sentence. Because a chain of whispers is only as strong as its weakest link. When the temples closed, when the fathers grew old and found no new sons to teach, the chain simply broke. And when the last father of the last Mithraism took his final breath, everything he knew went with him into silence. The secrecy that had protected the mysteries for 300 years became, in the end, the very thing that erased them. A religion that never wrote itself down cannot be revived. It can only be excavated. Now set Christianity beside it, and the contrast is almost painful. Mithraism admitted only men soldiers, officials, the loyal brotherhood of the legions. Christianity opened its doors to women, to slaves, to the poor, to children, to everyone the mysteries had politely excluded. Mithraism met in small caves holding a few dozen initiates. Christianity preached in marketplaces, fed the hungry, nursed the sick during plagues while others fled. Mithraism demanded silence. Christianity demanded testimony, and its martyrs turned every execution into a story that spread faster than any legion could march. Mithraism offered an elite an inward journey. Christianity offered the whole world a family. One recruited, the other embraced. And in the long arithmetic of history, an open hand will always outlast a closed circle. And yet the two faiths were never strangers. You have probably heard the claims that Christmas on December 25th was borrowed from the birthday of Sol Invictus, that the Christian communion mirrors the sacred banquet of Mithras and the sun, that ideas of rebirth and salvation flowed from the cave into the church. Some of these parallels are real, and even the early church fathers noticed them with alarm. Justin Martyr and Tertullian accused the mysteries of being a devilish imitation of the Eucharist. But we should be honest here, because the internet is not. Modern scholars, looking carefully at the evidence, do not conclude that Christianity copied Mithraism, or that Mithraism copied Christianity. What they see instead is two faiths breathing the same air, growing up side by side in the same empire, drawing from the same deep well of late antique longing, for light over darkness, for a meal that binds believers together, for a death that is not the end. The shared imagery is not plagiarism, it is kinship. Two answers to the same aching question, offered to the same restless world, and in the end, only one of them was built to last. Which brings us to the deepest lesson the mysteries have to teach, and it is not really about Rome at all. Perhaps what makes a tradition immortal is not the power of its ideas, but its ability to hand those ideas on. The teachings of Mithras may have been profound: the astronomy, the ascent of the soul, the conquest of fate. We will never fully know, and that is precisely the point. A truth that cannot be transmitted is indistinguishable, in the end, from a truth that never existed. A secret kept perfectly is a secret lost forever. The Christians wrote and copied and translated and preached, scattering their message like seed across the whole Mediterranean world. The Mithraists guarded their light so closely, so faithfully, so silently, that when the last torch went out in the last cave, there was simply no one left who knew how to relight it. They did not lose because their God was weaker. They lost because they never taught the world his name. And so the caves were sealed, the reliefs were buried, the 7 grades, the passwords, the whispered meanings of the dog and the serpent and the scorpion, All of it sank beneath the floors of churches and the foundations of medieval cities, into a silence that would last more than 1,000 years. History, it seemed, had rendered its verdict. Mithras was gone, and yet lost is not the same as gone, because nearly 2,000 years later, the traces of Mithras keep surfacing, in stone, in symbols, and in questions we still cannot answer. Walk through the city of London today, past the glass towers and the hurrying crowds, and beneath the headquarters of Bloomberg, you will find something impossible. 7 meters below the modern street, lit by mist and low amber light, stands a Roman temple. It was discovered in 1954, in a bombed-out construction site, when an archaeologist brushed away the mud and found the face of a young god in a Phrygian cap staring back at him. Tens of thousands of Londoners lined up in the rain to see it. They did not fully know what they were looking at, but something in them recognized it. That is the strange power of Mithras. 16 centuries after his last torches were extinguished, people still gather in the dark to stand where his initiates once knelt. And London is not alone. In Ostia, the old harbor city of Rome, more than a dozen Mithraea still hide among the warehouses and apartment blocks, their mosaic floors mapping the 7 grades of ascent like a game board for the soul. Beneath the church of Santa Prisca on the Aventine Hill, painted initiates still process along the walls, their frescoed lips frozen mid-hymn, fragments of their chants still legible after 1,800 years. Along Hadrian's Wall, in the wind and heather of northern Britain, small stone temples mark where homesick soldiers once shared bread and wine with their god at the edge of the known world. Along the Rhine and the Danube, the German frontier is seeded with altars, reliefs, dedications, the fingerprints of centurions and customs officers, and freed slaves who once swore oaths they carried silently to their graves. You can visit these places. You can stand in the exact spot where a blindfolded candidate once trembled before the Father. The cave did not vanish. It simply went quiet, but stone is only the most visible part of the inheritance. The ideas, too, left their traces. That vision of the soul descending through the planetary spheres at birth and climbing back through them after death. Gathering light, shedding weight did not die with the cult. It echoes through Neoplatonism, through the mystics of late antiquity, through centuries of philosophy that imagined life as an ascent from darkness toward an unconquerable light. The Stoics, who taught Roman soldiers to endure with discipline and to see the cosmos as ordered and divine, breathed the same air as the Mithraists, and the two traditions reinforced each other in the hearts of the same men. And the image at the center of it all, Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, outlived the temples entirely. It shone from imperial coins, from triumphal arches, from the iconography of emperors, and its radiance bled into the art of the very faith that replaced it. The halo of light around a sacred head, the birth of light celebrated in the depths of winter, the meal shared in remembrance of a divine victory. These images belong to no single tradition. They are older than the arguments about them. Mithras did not survive as a god. He survived as a grammar of light. And then, of course, there are the whispers. Wherever there is a secret society, someone will eventually mention Mithras. The 7 grades of initiation, the sealed chambers, the handshakes and passwords and hierarchies of ascent. It is tempting, deeply tempting, to draw a straight line from the Roman caves to the lodges of Freemasonry and the esoteric orders of modern Europe. Let us be honest with each other. No such line has ever been proven. The documented history of Freemasonry begins more than a millennium after the last Mithraism closed, and the resemblance is more likely a rhyme than a lineage, because human beings, whenever they build paths of initiation, seem to build them the same way. Degrees, trials, silence, light revealed in stages. Perhaps that is the real revelation. Not that Mithraism secretly survived, but that the pattern it perfected is something the human soul keeps rediscovering on its own. And still the fascination endures in books, in documentaries, in novels and games and late-night arguments among historians. Mithras keeps returning, the god who refuses to stay buried. So what is the final lesson of this long, strange story? Perhaps it is this: even the most powerful traditions can be buried by history. Empires fall, temples are sealed, entire ways of seeing the world can be reduced to fragments in a museum case. And yet the symbols remain, patient as stone, and the questions remain, restless as starlight. Every generation that kneels in the London Mithraeum, every scholar who traces the bull and the scorpion across the turning sky, every listener who has followed this story to its end, all of them prove that the past is not truly lost. It is waiting, encoded in marble and constellation, in painted walls and half-erased hymns, waiting for those who care enough to look and humble enough to admit how much we still do not know. Which leaves us, at last, with the question that has haunted this entire journey. When the torches went out and the caves fell silent, did Mithras truly die? Or did he simply dissolve into the halo of light, into the midwinter festival, into the very idea that a soul can climb out of darkness by degrees, scattering himself so completely into our symbols and traditions that we live among his fragments without ever speaking his name? Was Mithraism just an esoteric religion that perished with its empire, or did it preserve a system of spiritual knowledge that we have never fully decoded? I would genuinely love to know what you believe. Share your thoughts in the comments below, because conversations like these are how buried things come back into the light. And if you love ancient secret societies, initiation rites, mystical symbols, and the civilizations that shaped the human story, then stay with us. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next journey into the greatest mysteries of the ancient world. The torches of the Mithraeum went out 16 centuries ago, but somewhere between the stars and the stone, the mystery is still burning, waiting for those who choose to look.